Welcome back to another episode of System of Systems, the audio misinformation arm of the Safety Propaganda Counterintelligence Network. These are your hosts, Adam
and Will.
And we are here with perhaps the only writer in America who is richer, more successful, and is higher on the New York Times bestseller list than even me, Mr. Sean Kilpatrick. Thank you for joining us today. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, good sir. Yeah, I cleared my schedule. My agents lined this up. You know, I had extra time today between thrumming my bottom on the theory circuit.
Man, it's crazy. Yeah, I feel like, you know, it was just a couple days ago when we were having lunch with Jonathan Franzen and Toni Morrison. She's dead, but she came back alive just to meet us and, wrote a contract. It was pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing how famous and rich we are.
She had some real important horse shit to say about the body and how the body affects the body.
And the black and the black and the black and the black. It's actually kind of funny. My column for Compact Magazine last week was about the biennial. At first, I was kind of like, I was like, maybe it'll be like fine. That's like the best you can hope for with the biennial is like, maybe it'll be fine. I can walk through it and not want to blow my fucking brains out. But right when I got there and they hand me the press release and it just kicks off with a Toni Morrison quote, I'm like, oh, fuck. It's already ruined.
They're checking their boxes off. Yeah.
God, I have so much contempt for Toni Morrison because I feel like she was just the one Black writer that like English teachers were demanding that you like all the time. It's not even like that she's Black. I mean, it's partly that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's great Black writers, but it was just like Toni Morrison is just like so appealing to the literary establishment that she's just it's the worst.
Baldwin I got sick of real quick.
Same, yeah.
And they neglect guys like the guy that wrote Black No More, that really gene Toomer, these guys, they're always nowhere to be found in these courses because they wrote with balls.
Have you read Darius James before? Negrophobia?
Oh yeah, Darius James, brilliant. That I love that screenplay, poetic screenplay, and then his house burnt down, and he had a hell of a life, right? And he was destitute. I think he was currently destitute or something. Or did he?
Yeah, he currently is.
Yeah.
They republished Negrophobia and tried to. I remember reading a couple essays that came out that tried making like a BLM case for his work.
Oh boy.
Right. Yeah, because it's so not in tune with the message. That book is like, I mean, it's a lampooning of like racial paranoia of white people, but definitely of like Black people too. And he's kind of like on Black people's case for like playing into their own stereotypes. Like that shit is way more racist than I could get away with.
He wrote a great work of literature. It takes everybody down. It's a pure 90s absurd avant-pop era. Damn shame, that he's not canonized or the like, or at least affirmative action is failing us here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the thing is like his biggest supporters were Kathy Acker and Dennis Cooper, whites. Last time I checked. And the people that hated him the most were avant-garde Black artists like Betty Saar, the sculptor, and Amiri Baraka. And
of course,
they were both coming at him for like making Blackness into like an abject thing. So like that's the real kind of reality of. I think that's the reality of like when you're actually good and interesting is that you don't even get like the same like diversity points that the conformists get or whatever. Like you lose everything once you're actually saying something challenging.
Quality seems to be punished consistently.
Yeah.
There was a brief window into the mainstream in the late 20th century where quality could slip in there. Still a lot of shit, but quality could mainstream slip in, but no more. It's very niche now. Though it's a big deal to me. My young self was a big deal and holds up amazingly, I think. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah, Goat was very influential on me, like around 18, 19. Yeah.
You find out when you have that first big love, and then you read Shit Magnet.
Yeah, I got into all that stuff at the same time, 17 or 18 or so. Parfrey, Goad, Sodos.
Yep.
All that stuff. Dude, Sean, did I tell you I had drinks with Sodos like a month ago?
Nice. What was it like?
It was fucking awesome. Like, I went out with him, Philip Best, and Lionel Mountains, the artist. And I know Philip and Lionel, but I didn't know that Peter knew who I was. But he had like read everything that I had ever put out there. And it was pretty surreal. It was surreal because of how both simultaneously normal he seemed, but also he was kind of exactly how I thought he would be at the same time. Like a maybe less threatening version of what I had imagined.
Yeah, but it's not. But it's not an insane monologue of rollicking hatred that's going to get you necessarily. But like his work, an amazing speaker from what I've seen.
Yeah, there's that. I think it's that something Dennis Cooper put on. I think it was Palais de Tokyo in Paris. But he basically like tells like half the audience to leave before it starts. He's like, if you don't know who I am, I'd prefer you leave right now. Yeah. So before we get into the nitty gritty here, I was wondering, because I just wrote my safety propaganda column for the week, and I spent most of it chronicling my newfound fascination, which is binge watching clips from the Amber Heard Johnny Depp defamation trial. Have any of you guys seen what has happened this week?
Yeah, clips of the comedians. I'm somewhat briefed.
It's the funniest shit I've ever heard in my entire life. Amber Heard's lawyers are getting their asses handed to them on such an extreme level. Like, she looks so crazy and like she looks 1,000 times more crazy and evil after her defamation lawsuit filed against him than she did previously. We learned that she chucked a fucking vodka bottle at him that cut him to the bone. We learned that she actively lied knowingly about him assaulting her. Like, she admits on tape, like, I needed to get your attention somehow. And then it's all capped off by the revelation that she took a fucking shit in their bed. I used to date a girl. I lived with her for almost 2 years. That was like very similarly BPD. And I think that's what was so interesting to me, because 65% of, I think it might be higher, 75%, something like that, of people that are diagnosed bipolar disorder, of course, women. The thing with like bipolar women is their extreme like contradictory moods and intensity. It can be very seductive at first, especially for like Jewish Coomer simps like me, you know?
It's great for the honeymoon phase, yeah.
Yeah, the honeymoon phase ends up becoming like very compelling. But it's like really easy to get trapped in a cycle because they're very talented at denigrating your self-esteem with emotional abuse, but then flipping it around on you and making you feel guilty that you're failing them. And the fact that, you know, Johnny Depp, you know, this guy has $1 bajillion. He's a total fucking drug addict weirdo who made 5 movies where he played a gay pirate. Not exactly the most sympathetic figure, you know? This isn't a beloved Ryan Gosling, whatever type, you know? This is a weird, off-putting figure. But the fact that she's so crazy and evil that she was able to make Johnny Depp, Captain Jack Sparrow, look like a empathetic everyman that basically every guy who's been sexually active in the 2000s and 2010s can relate to. I think it's like a big win in the battle of the sexes for men. And I also think it might be like the final nail in the coffin of Me Too. Like there is just no way to ever say again, believe women, because people will be like, believe women. What about that crazy bitch Amber Heard?
One can only hope. Scapism for her would be a nice example to make. And for the face of the millennial Me Too false accusation racket, right in between two boats covered in milk and honey, let the insects come in. She refuses to eat, force feed, so then the insects follow into the intestinal tract, bursting outwards through the cavities, sometimes up to 17 days.
I mean, the thing with Me Too is that it did really stoke like an atmosphere of mass paranoia. Because at the height of it, I remember even going back in my own romantic history and being like, did I act fucked up that time? It did like make you think more about your behavior. And maybe some parts of that were positive to an extent. Like a little self-reflection isn't the worst thing in the world. But when it's the point of like things that were like totally normal, like flirtatious misgestures that were read the wrong way, everything was sort of criminalized. But I think that's done. Like that psyop, I think we can finally close the book on.
From your lips to God's ears, yes? Yes. The victim mentality of the millennial blob, men and women. Maybe some good, yes. Applying to the arts. Now, unacceptable. Scapism, traitor to the cloth. Execution, please. Girls were charming as fuck, especially Gen X. A little older than me, in the 90s, early 2000s, I'd say.
Christina Ricci.
Yeah. That's a great staple. Natasha Lyonne, these types.
When American indie film was first coming into its own, and stars like Vincent Gallo and Harmony Korine and Todd Solondz were sort of making their bones. So maybe like shit is changing. I think maybe the Vanity Fair article this week, even though it was flawed, I think there is like a little shift happening in the culture.
Despite the director's horse shit, Northman, the film itself, I don't mean what he's saying in the press, that I guess he has to say by contract, perhaps. His far left gibberish he's saying about, he just went on Maron and they were nebbish together. It's just the delicate denial of what he did, moment to moment talent being executed on screen,
Yeah, well, Aronofsky's thing was he always kind of over-intellectualized his work, while what he was good at was just being like really edgy and almost like trashy.
Exactly. Yeah, precisely. And that's what, I felt like The Northman might bring something into the culture if it did well. It seems like perhaps it didn't do as well as it. If you think that the Nicole Kidman character is a sort of a fuck you to the Me Too in a loose way.
Well, I've read that there is an incest thing going on.
Yeah, she's just like Amber Heard. The film is not cohesive with the line of propaganda that the director is spewing in the public, and he is above that. I think he is perhaps just completely unaware of that, the cultural idiocy of what he's saying, or because he's too focused on his art to care, or he's being. Just the money makes it so he has to talk like that. Yeah.
I mean, he's an A24 contract guy. There's probably stipulations in there.
Yeah. Now they gone woke, right? Or have they?
They've always kind of had like a libtardy, at least PR junket, but at the same time, like Harmony Korine is like a full blown Trump guy. And he was their first, Spring Breakers was their first big movie.
All right.
Let's continue. Let's get into stuff about writing. So, Sean, you have a whole bunch of books at this point, but you said something interesting, I think, in regards to one of your poetry works that came out. Maybe I read it in Fanzine or HTML Giant or one of those old blogs we used to all read.
Oh, yeah.
You said this is poetry in love with its own sickness. What does that kind of idea mean to you?
In line with the traditional Artaud through Kinski, but that the actor should annihilate themselves to create the vision, right? To fulfill the vision, and doubly so for a writer. Maybe it's less physical certainly there have been mental repercussions
Yeah.
for me. And I'm sure you guys know as well what it's like. There's definitely, and I've been at it for so long that there are all kinds of repercussions, physical and financial and everything. Whereas I have no money, no life situation, no prospects. Future is going to be really dark. Not a complaint, by the way, because I can still make it. Now, I can't apparently put it the fuck out anywhere, hardly anywhere. I've been kicked off some presses, but for what reason?
Yeah.
We were conferencing with this press, and I looked this guy in the eye. I said, look, every slur you can think of, baby, is in this. Back out now, okay? I'm not changing it, all right? And he said, hey, no problem. Now, many months later, it comes down to copy editing and, I guess thanks because they found a couple typos, but also they insisted that I cut all the slurs. And I said, absolutely not. And they pulled it. So not that, this isn't, indie press. It's not like there's any stakes at all involved.
That's right.
There's a couple of magazines, thank Christ, that get it, right? Could be worse, could always be worse.
Yeah.
But, the woke thing, it really kicked the shit out of the literary. It should not be understated.
No. Yeah.
For the arts, it was a nightmare, worse than any Christian shit from back in the day.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's because, with Christians, you can just be like, you can blow it off easily, It's like, I respect your beliefs. But
I'm a demon. Awesome.
Yeah. You guys can think I'm evil and you guys can do your thing. But when people are sort of, when the result is the same, but the justifying rhetorical affect is like a radical chic posture, everybody gets confused because they're supposed to be like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to. I'm this educated college faggot libtard.
There we go.
So I guess I should just go along with this.
By 90s standards, we'd all be considered faggots as men, but nowadays faggots are more masculine than straight millennial. It's very confused, but
yeah, absolutely. Because I remember, like, when I first heard about you, it was because you were collaborating with like Blake Butler and those guys. Do you still keep in touch with them, or do you feel ostracized from that sector of the literary world as well?
I would say 99% ostracized. Butler is my one guy.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's pretty good at not being overly political, and I don't care because he's my guy.
Yeah, he's great.
He's my one buddy. His work is so monumental to me. And I came up with, it's like that thing. And he's the one guy, a couple others, one or two others, but not 95, 99%. You're dead to me level shit, Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
with no care for consequence. They're dead to me.
Yeah. Man, I'm like at this point that's still kind of missing is like a magazine where all the good shit can be in. Like that used to be like so important, to me as a kid growing up. Like, God, even shitty magazines like Spin Magazine or better ones like Index or whatever. It was such like a thing where you could just absorb so much content. But now, like, for example, during the pandemic, there were a couple like art magazines that were adopting like pseudo-based stances or whatever. And this one called, I guess it doesn't matter what it was called, but it was a German magazine. And they asked me first to interview my friend Matthew Maloof. We did that ran. And then the next one, they're like, would you mind doing an essay? And I was like, sure. And I wrote about that photographer who committed murder-suicide, Saul Fletcher. And he did this in 2020. He killed his girlfriend and himself. And the weirdest thing happened. This guy went from an artist represented by 3 galleries to literally memory hold. So much so that I didn't even know that he had died. And I was a fan. I didn't know he had died until about 10 months after it had happened. And I was like, yo, what the fuck? all his galleries deleted all their shit. All the magazines deleted their entire archives. So I wrote this essay about him and kind of did it like a true crime thing, but with like a political angle, and talked about how this iteration of liberalism, it can't confront anything challenging. It just needs to zap it out of memory entirely. You can't really look at him as an artist and a criminal, or the fact that maybe what made his art compelling was the same thing that made him a criminal. That just has to be erased. And then I turned the article in. I thought it was fantastic. And I was like, I'm going to blow this little German bitch away right now. And then she sends me back edits. She's like, I get that you're angry. She was basically accusing me of being like an angry white man. I get that you're angry, but can you like include some text to basically remind the audience that I'm one of the good guys? And I was like, no, fuck that. You're not going to have it now. And then I just self-published it. Nice. So still, even with this like shift, there's still like a lot. There's people branding off of like the energy happening, but there's still like a huge cowardice that saturates it all.
If anyone can be the next Feral House, please, sir. But
yeah, that's what I gotta do.
The chicken shit, the level of chicken shittery, the pearl clutchery, sexlessness of it. A fucked up artist. We're spoiled rotten because when we were coming up, that was sort of not celebrated, but it was a thing.
Yeah.
Compared to now, it was celebrated. It was at least mentioned, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, and there used to be some expectation. I mean, you'd have like a Charlie Rose interview with like I watched a great one with Francis Bacon, and it's like, and the whole vibe is that Charlie Rose is this buttoned up, Yale educated intellectual broadcaster, and then Francis Bacon is this like booze besotted, chain smoking alcoholic. And that's what was like cool about the thing. There's a audience expectation that an artist is supposed to behave different than this buttoned up mainstream news guy. But now I feel like they're both not allowed. Charlie Rose is replaced by, some angry black woman. And the artist is replaced by a shrieking transvestite.
Yeah, they get Charlie Rose for winking at some girl or something. Yeah,
it was like something. And that shit was such a bummer because Charlie Rose was really like one in a million.
Yeah, it's like you don't know until you lose them, right? Yeah, and then look at it now.
Yeah, definitely, man. Just because amazing interviews with Lynch, David Foster Wallace, Paglia, Bret Easton Ellis. And that shit was, that was like a big broadcast news show. There is absolutely no equivalent now of where people having high level intellectual discussions about art and books and philosophy in the way that Charlie Rose did it. It's almost like his Me Too was like very convenient because then they were able to totally usher out like Gen X mainstream media pseudo-intellectualism with just like the insanity of the rest of the media.
Yeah, and what do we have now? We have, he had Mamet on, right? So we have Mamet on Rogan. Now Rogan, at least he's not woke, I guess, but his interview with Mamet recently is disgusting to me. His quasi-illiterate rebuking of almost everything Mamet says, his over-literal misinterpretations of everything Mamet is saying.
But that's the thing with Rogan is he's basically a libtard. Yeah,
he's like slightly, I guess they prop him up as not woke, but he's sold out.
Since like 2016, he's been pretty woke.
I completely forgot he sold out to Spotify, and then they erased all the McGinnis stuff, etc. Right? And
even before he signed to Spotify, though, like a lot of almost immediately after the 2016 election, like he really clamped down on like who he would let have on the show. Like post Trump getting elected, you don't get McInnes or like Milo on the show or anyone comparable to like them.
Right.
Like period.
And he's a great example of how, they still call him a Nazi. So, there really is absolutely no benefit to doing half measures at all, ever. Well,
he's probably making more money now.
Yeah.
So in his case, there is that, unfortunately.
But his soul is canned ham.
I don't know though. He was like so big to fail, anyways. But
it is one of those weird things. Like I would imagine had he stuck it out on his own, he would have made maybe not the same amount of money, but like a decent chunk of fucking money still. Like I feel like he was making a decent chunk of money before signing to Spotify too. So like
definitely millions, tens of millions.
Yeah. So like I still don't entirely understand what that pivot was for, other than maybe to like save face, I guess, and be more respectable because it's like on a platform and not just him solo or something. Well, like, it feels like it must be like some weird generational thing or something.
Yeah, and it's also the difference between still having to grind and build the audience versus a guaranteed contractual salary that is legacy money that'll be handed down to his kids, grandkids, etc.
That is cool, yeah.
Polinick on, and it was the first time, and he had Polinick on, and it was such a great, because he rarely has fucking writers on, but then when literary type, it was such a great, because it was Polinick talking about how his writing workshop became woke. That was the last time he was great, I think, in that episode, and Tua was a big deal to me as a kid. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Michelle and I, we just saw them in Jersey, and it was absolutely. I've seen them 3 times. Because they were my favorite band from like ages 8 to 14.
Yeah.
But Sean, what have you been working on lately? Are you writing a novel right now?
I'm finishing all my poetical script shits and my prose, pornographic prose and poetry book. I have a big collection. I was gonna put out myself because I'm gonna be very anal about it. It sort of feels like a suicide note in a way, but yeah. But speaking of the sickness, but it very well may be, actually. It'll be a poetry collection and a big kind of prose with criticism as well collection, and trying to make a movie as well, which is almost impossible. Hell
yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. I'm learning the tech. It's very, it's very hard. But yeah, I'm trying to do that. It'll be really fucked up, though, if I can pull it off.
You know what? I haven't even spoken this out loud yet, but I really feel like the totality of my vision, as pretentious as that sounds, could be best realized perhaps in theater. And I'm about a third of the way writing this book right now. And I keep getting sidetracked. I wrote this short story for this reading I have coming up. But anyways, when that shit's all done, because I don't know, I just don't know why there aren't more why that's not a thing that really good writers do anymore, which is like fuck around with theater a little bit. And I thought it would be really cool to bring a super fucked up play to life, even if I can't get it shown in a theater, just like have impromptu performances with like friends getting fucked up and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm real big on that. I would love to do that. I wrote a play. I mean, it was never put on. That's very ideal. Are you a Pinter guy? I'm a big Pinter guy. I imagine you.
Yeah, I like Pinter.
I see him in some of your work and the tightness of your work. But
him and Mailer.
Oh yeah, Mailer. I'm rediscovering Mailer. What a fucking treat he is.
Yeah,
and guys like Philip Ridley. These guys. Howard Barker. Real wild stuff in the theater that is very, very niche now. Very niche. I mean, I sent my thing around. It's not that I'm not on that level, but I'm saying just anything. The responses were a lot of this type of thing we don't do. This type of
we don't do cool things.
Yeah, well, you don't even see. In Bruges, the great playwright who did.
I know.
I forget his
Martin McDonough.
McDonough. Yeah. We don't even see McDonough, and he's a great sort of balance between very extreme and more mainstream.
Yeah,
you don't even see that performed as much. Will Eno, you could see a few years ago. I don't see it so much now, though. Will Eno is a good example, especially early Will Eno. You would see that here and there, but I don't see it so much. Very disappointingly.
Yeah, when I first moved to New York, Tracy Letts was doing some cool stuff. He did Killer Joe and Bug, which both got turned into Friedkin films.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah,
great stuff. And also, I remember seeing a couple maybe one or two plays. Do you remember a guy who wrote for Spin magazine named Mark Spitz? He died of a heroin overdose a few years ago.
It's ringing a bell. I'm drawing a blank.
So, okay, so he was kind of like the shittiest era of Spin when everybody could tell that like rock and roll was dead, and he was acting like, I mean, I hated his music writing. He was acting like Ryan Adams and the Strokes were like akin to the Velvet Underground and Black Sabbath in terms of importance. But, you know, someone was like, you got to go, let's go check out this play by this guy named Mark Spitz. And I was like, you know, Mark Spitz, that guy who writes about the fucking Strokes all the time. And they're like, yeah. And then I went to the play. That guy was kind of like a fucking, as shitty as his taste in music was, he was like straight up like a dark drug addict genius.
Was he part of In Your Face? Was he In Your Face theater with Sarah Kane in that?
I actually think that's it. Yeah.
Shopping and Fucking? Is that him, or am I thinking of someone else?
Mark Spitz.
Not Shopping and Fucking, but one of those.
That was Chow Lin, wasn't it? Shopping and Fucking? Or no, that was
that was very different. Very different.
American Apparel.
Oh yeah. Yeah, very different style. Very extremely different. Well, Chow Lin. I'd like to see him do something violent for once.
Dude, I no shade. I can't deal with Chow Lin's writing.
I go back with, you know, I have I'm not the best person to, but
oh god,
I mean, talk about the millennial. I mean, the voice of the millennial. The opiated voice of the millennial blank. He's maybe the best at it, but I mean, not without talent. But again.
Oh no. Well, the thing that's weird about him is like his branding is always really good. Like I always excited for the next Chow Lin novel, and then I buy it and read it, and I can never get through it. It might just be one of those things where it like personally doesn't ring a bell with me, because it reminds me kind of like of that chilly affectation, cold removal of Brett Ellis. But Brett Ellis, it's like cold removal as you're watching like a sadistic threesome sex scene between like supermodels in Europe, which is like awesome.
Right.
And then with Chow Lin, it's like about his parents or like.
The diary element, I have a hard time with. I see his influence. I remember when he was coming up, we were in a lot of the same, not that no one knows who I am, but when we were in the same mags, he stole a girlfriend from me, kind of, and it's a funny thing, but interesting. We met eventually. He's an interesting guy, but it's the opposite of my thing. Yeah. Just on the page, you know, I'm not against plain writing, but I'm one of these people that I don't know. I like the 1800s elegance better than, I notice a lot of like the plain, speaking again, sickness. I like a tangled, fucked up thing. I don't like it, but a lot of people mistake that nowadays, especially on that the new right is now the counterculture. They'll mistake a tangled lingual fuckery with academic leftism, which is not my thing. I don't want abstraction into air. I don't want theory shit.
Yeah.
I just want like 1800s elegant, vehement anger, Melville. This is my thing, and it's no one likes it. It's terrible. It sucks. Everybody hates it. But I can't do plain myself, but I appreciate it when it's well done, etc. But I see, increasingly that, especially from an old grad buddy of mine in the Michigan Quarterly recently, just talking about how lingual people are pathetic, and he's got a nice cushy job, and it's to get in a little dead to me area here, but. He was rude to me last time we were at a party. And so, vengeance is coming. And usually lingual fuckery types don't hate plain language. Usually plain language guys hate lingual fuckery, has been my experience. And also we have nothing to show for our lingual fuckery. It gives you nothing.
Right.
It gives you nothing. And so
we both come across that a little. We've talked about this before, is that even though we've been semi-embraced by the new right, I've definitely I've talked about this before with I Am 1776. They're doing art and literature for dissidents. They asked me to do something. I read about Neue Deutsch. And it's like, if you're going to have an art and literature for dissidents thing, this guy is like one of the most extreme writers on the planet right now. And then they got, upset because of all the talk about fucking third world prostitutes and my own sex with prostitutes and they killed the piece. So like, there's always a little pushback.
Yeah, they killed a piece of mine as well. I've been saying lately that I never liked the left. Even when I was young, I just assumed I'm to be lumped there because free speech, etc. But I never liked them, and I was always reluctant when they were around. I never liked them, but the right never liked me. You see what I'm saying? So I never liked the left actively, and the right never liked me. But there's some crossover. It's different now, and now there's crossover. But also with things, say with 1776, which I appreciate what they're doing, et cetera, right? They're not woke. Anybody that's not woke is the only thing I care about.
Right.
If you're not woke, you're cool with me, right? So falls into this, is what they said. It's like your work, it's way too tangled. You got to redo the whole thing. If I wrote plain, I would write plain. I can't do it. It's going to not be good because I'm not talented enough to work ambidextrously between styles. I wish I could, but
also it's like, if they're asking us to write something, if you want us to write something, why wouldn't you want us to write like we do? You want like a blasé fucking essay about why AOC is a fucking retard whore. Anybody can do that, but only I can do it like I do it.
Right, and it's part of the. I see how they perhaps in their fighting the woke, they lose sight of when it becomes. To me, it's only about style. The end, right? All the politics, I'm completely in the dark. I know I've learned what I've learned through self-defense. The end, right? I'm completely ignorant in general. He's saying it in this libtardy, tangly college way, but maybe they saw it that way, right? And so, which makes me weep.
Yeah, it's been tough for me. I'm very appreciative of my editors at Compact Magazine for giving me that platform. Certainly it's been good for me and the money is good. They're still vibing with what you're doing. They just want it, a certain version of it. That I'm fine with because it becomes an interesting sort of intellectual exercise,
right? To
try and present my work in a different way than I normally would.
Again, speaking of sickness, I don't have enough comprehensive technical understanding of grammatical usage to be apt enough to be properly elegant.
Especially because I'm writing about real people, but it always it started plausible. Like the best chapters, I thought were the ones that started kind of plausible and then get just like absolutely retarded, with a documentation of Anna Cavan's weird relationship with her therapist. And then it ends with her sucking the 9-inch dick of that therapist, just because I'm like, I wonder if this happened. So yeah, you're sort of transitioning modes. But I think that was just like a natural impulse because I started trying to picture this thing. And then once you have that picture, then your mind you're just kind of like fantasizing about it getting weird. What I like about your writing is it is experimental. It's like formally strange, but at the same time, it's very addictive to read.
I'm just accidentally experimental, I might say.
Accidental avant-garde is the best shit, though. Yeah. God, there's like great example. Okay, for a great example of this. Will, are you familiar with a band called The Hospitals?
Vaguely, not super familiar though. I don't know any of the backstory. Like, tell me how this is relevant here.
So The Hospitals was started off as kind of like a garagey noise punk band, and they put out 2 pretty good records. But their third record was called Hairdryer Peace, and it got weird amount of buzz for what it was. I think The Wire of all places gave it the album of the year. Or like second album of the year.
Okay.
Which would typically make me hate it, but there was just something undeniably fresh about this band. It sort of in that Beefheart lineage, White Light, White Heat, Twin Infinitive, okay. Just like deconstructed rock and roll, sort of taken apart.
Okay.
But in Barrett from Contain podcast used to live with the guy from the Hospitals. It was basically like a one-man band sort of situation with session players. He was the drummer and the singer.
Okay.
And Barrett lived with this guy, and he told me that when he played, he hated avant-garde music. He liked ZZ Top and Aerosmith, and when people asked him what he played, he'd be like, it's rock and roll. What are you talking about? But when you listen to it, it just sounds absolutely, it's like more warped than like the craziest power electronic stuff. It's like totally fucked. So his sort of like approximation of pitch perfect classic rock, tightly produced stuff, and his total inability to get there is actually the thing that made it so special. That's what accidental avant-garde is.
I would identify with that a lot. Yeah, I'm behind on music. I haven't heard of that, but what you say is exactly. And I love Barrett's idea of rock bands shitting off of buildings, and this is such a great thing. He said, a layer of torquing, warping. You say warping is exactly the right phrase, because I'll start with a layer that's maybe even more plain, and then I can't let it sit, and I'll cut it and torque it and fuck with it. A lot of editing, a lot of consecution.
Yeah, it's weird because I'm very suspicious of like purposefully lo-fi shit, right? Like whether it's like bands or like filmmakers that purposely adopt the grainy look. Like I don't dislike the grainy look, but I like it more if it's just like a limitation of the materials at hand, right?
Right.
I try to adopt a similar thing in my work. Like with the limited skills I have, I do want it to be the absolute, like I never asked to be bastardized to like transgressive underground literature, you know? My goal is like, I want to be Norman Mailer. I want to be famous, right?
It's a nice thought. It's such a nice thought.
Yeah. And I think that should be like the quest, is like the striving for greatness and perfection. And even if you don't get there, but you can approximate it, and like sort of your art is that antagonism between what you want and what you're actually able to achieve, I think that actually yields very interesting results.
Towlin's influence, they call it autofiction now, right? But because he's the first one, okay, so you see the origin, the talent there, the natural, that is his voice. But then you see the imitators, right? And because it's so popular, his natural sort of lo-fi voice becomes misamplified into a lesser, no effort, cool thing, trending thing, fashion, which is the result of all the pussy he got, I guess. And which was monumental, a stunningly monumental amount, I'm sure. And good for him.
Yeah, that's cool.
Good for him. But also, now we got, I don't know, popular to just write your diary now.
Right, dude. That's so funny. Like, okay, so I was at this. Barrett actually was in town, and he invited me and Alex Beanstalk to meet him up with this magazine launch party. And it was definitely like going for a sort of, we're against cancel culture sort of vibe, right? But like that sort of like dip downtown simulacra of the thing that, it just felt like too little too late sort of thing. Barrett read something, Ariana Rines read something, and I forget who it was, but this Asian girl gets up and they announce her as the creator of autofiction. And I was like, the fuck are you talking about? Henry Miller created autofiction like 100 fucking years ago. And, I was a little drunk. And then after the show, the bitch came and chewed me out.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Permanently chewed out.
The readings were mostly terrible, but then So Barrett has like one of his tendencies is he tells people things like he's in control of the thing, but in fact he has like no say over what's going on at all. So he told Beanstalk that he was on the roster and to read, and like no such thing was true at all. So Beanstalk kept waiting to be called up, and it never happened. So at the end, Beanstalk, like when everybody was just drinking, Beanstalk grabbed the mic from the stage and just did like a guerrilla reading where he was talking to, like, they finally kicked him off the stage, and he was just like, "You can't kick me off because I'm fat and gay." It was a good night.
I like that guy. I've heard him on a few of the pods. You work with him, and
yeah. He's one of my best friends, and my office is his apartment. I got a room at his apartment. Yeah,
he's got a natural style I like a lot. That's a rare thing. You know, that's especially nowadays. You know, it's important.
Yeah, he's like a real art school maniac, jack of all trades type. You know what I was thinking before, though? With another former guest of ours, Will. I think Blauer's Apocalypse Confidential is probably like the best thing happening right now, because it's the only place. Yeah. I mean, it's the only place where I can turn in anything and he's just like stoked to run it as is. You know, no like agenda. And that's the thing with a lot of the right wing journals now, is they all do have their like little micro agendas.
Right. Yeah. When I was in there, he was a class act. Great guy. I love everything that him and Brendan, those guys. I love those guys. I follow them, and it's very fascinating to me. You and them and a couple guys seem to get it. And it's rare. It's fucking rare nowadays. They have style. At least we'll make our own fucking 90s now. You know, we'll bring style back. You know.
Yeah.
Which is exactly the type of attitude you have to have.
People are there. People are showing up for it to observe it, which has never been a facet of anything I've done.
I got to do a reading on May 11th. It'll be me, your buddy Will, Alex Hampshire.
Oh, okay.
The furniture activist. Me, him, and Stacy Skolnick, whose work I've never read before, but I'm curious how that will go. My mom's coming, so I that's why I had to change what I was going to read, because I don't want to say faggot and shit too many times in front of her.
Yeah, well, that's at least an understandable form of censorship, whereas it's not being mandated to you by some magazine. That's more of a personal, personal decision instead of the mandate of the culture or whatever.
Yeah. Just being outside New York, it was like nobody cared about COVID. Country music, honky tonk music, noise, and we saw noise music in the woods, and everybody was like, it felt like the old days. It just felt so far removed. Maybe it's probably an important thing to do right now to get shit going like outside the confines of New York and LA. There's always a few things that are okay happening in New York, but you know, it is like tranny hell.
Detroit is a dead mule of just not a literary.
Well, I'll try and get you out here for a reading soon.
I'd be down for it. You know, whatever. You know, I could make it. I can. You know, I'm very broke, but I could probably come out there at some point.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. I mean, it's funny. KGB Bar is still the place where like all those things happen. The Compact magazine launch party was just there.
It seemed like a big deal to me just because I remember back in the day. I don't know what's going on there now. If it's a woke hub or I don't know. Maybe
KGB. It's like it's hard to say. It's like neutral.
I mean, because of I guess the implication would be that it might be woke because of the commie name, but that's like funny though. It's like
yeah. When I got here in 2011, it was basically the end of that era, but I caught the tail end of it.
Nice.
And when I first moved to New York, it was like the height of my drug addiction. I was a daily user of heroin by this point, but I'd go check out shit at KGB Bar, and then right around the corner on 2nd Avenue was Lit Lounge, which was infamous for no sign. It just had a lamp outside, so it had sort of like a shady, clandestine feeling. And my addiction was so intense by this point that it had been like 6 hours since I had last fixed, and I was already feeling pretty shitty. So at Lit Lounge, there was like 6 bathrooms, and they were always had lines like out the door. So I'm feeling awful, and I have to wait in line for like 25 minutes. Like my bowels are giving out, and I feel like just like a total degraded loser monster. All my friends are like already grabbing drinks and dancing. I'm like, oh, I need to take a shot of heroin before I fucking can function. And I finally get to a stall and open the door. It's unlocked. And to my shock, some fucking guy with long hair was also in the bathroom shooting heroin. like the fact that I wasn't the only demon in that bar at that time was so reassuring, you know.
It's a better time, I'll tell you. Someone could be intense like that, you know, junkie level intense, and it would be a literary thing, you know. And there was a lineage there, you know. There was something there, and I appreciate that. It was a, you know, the beats. Did the beats get you started in lit when you were young? Is that because that was the thing for me? The beats and Burroughs.
For me, it was Burroughs and Lester Bangs actually. Were first, and then Bret Easton Ellis I got into when I was like 14.
Yeah, right. That me too. Same thing. So it's like the icons of fucked up behavior, right? Yeah. And, it's a beautiful thing. Long gone now. I pine.
So like right away, you have this sort of like absurdist pop cultural inflection that I feel like kind of grounds the work in a way that is very gripping.
Yeah, I'm big on Larry McCaffrey, all the avant pop anthologists, guy Mark Lehner, you know, and very fucked up art that slipped in, you know. No, and it's not
so right though. I mean, like even a show like The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Gorgeous.
It's like avant-garde. When you watch it now, it looks like straight up like avant-garde film art. Like
it holds up really. So I've revisited all this. Holds up amazing. Holds up.
Oh man, I should rewatch that. Have you ever watched that one? Adventures of Pete and Pete. Yeah. Well, yeah, I got to show her that shit. There was always this one episode that stuck in my mind where the younger Pete, he walks by a band playing in a garage. And I even kind of remember the song. It was like, nobody knows nobody. It was like sort of a alt rock jam. And the whole episode, he's trying to track down this song. He's like, I need to hear this fucking song again, but he can't remember it. And then at the end, it turns out that like the band never even existed. It was just this like flash of artistic inspiration that he had. And something was like blocking him up, but then it came out and he realized like it was his song. That shit was very powerful for me.
Amazing. The creativity, the inspiration of that show alone. And there were other shows of its equal at that time as well. I mean, yeah, and you'd see like Hunter Thompson, Steve Buscemi, Iggy Pop showing up in there. Yeah. What a fucking show.
Yeah,
they build a tunnel in one episode, and they try to stay up for 11 days in that one episode, and it's crazy shit.
Well, we were spoiled, man. Like, I say this a lot because, like, we were the last generation. Like when we were kids, like I remember when Kurt Cobain died because, like, my dad was really upset. Like we were the last generation where like rock and roll was like not only a part of the culture, but it was like central to the culture where writers weren't just writers, they were celebrities. The young British artists, like all this sorts of shit was happening at the same time. And that sort of collapse between the avant-garde and the mainstream that happened for that brief moment was really special. It was like, it was consistent with the end of the 20th century somehow, consistent with mass media somehow. But for like a brief moment, MTV and all these things, there was like tons and tons of possibilities for where this stuff could go. And then it was literally snuffed out in one fell swoop, it seemed like, around like 2002 or something.
Yeah, it was a brutal draining. And I was listening to some theory that 9/11 might have played into that culturally somehow. I don't know if that's that it inspired. I forget whose theory this was, but that it inspired a move from darker irony of the 90s to millennial sincerity and just like elven cuteness and stuff like this. Beginning where it wasn't completely disgusting in the 2000s, where some of those hipsters, at least they kind of looked sexy. I don't know, the girls looked sexy in those outfits with the bangs, etc.
Yeah,
but then it became disgusting and I mean, well, compared to the woke shit, the hipsters look pretty neat now, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. But I never really got in with that. I don't, I'm very like isolated, but they seemed neat to me. I don't know, from a distance in their clothes anyway. I don't know. But
yeah, and early Vice Mag, was sort of like an extension of the 90s,
Yeah, that's who I mean. That's specifically that type of hipster is who I mean.
Yeah. I mean, Vice Magazine was like very, very cool and provocative at first.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the first issue I ever picked up was the drugs issue. I was like 17 and I was going to look at colleges with my dad staying at my uncle's apartment, and he had this magazine on a coffee stand. He's like in New York. He's a fag and he's a gay man. Will, can we edit that out? I don't want to call my uncle a fag.
I got it.
He's a gay man. But anyways, he had this magazine on the nightstand. I'm flipping through it and I'm already like well into drugs at this point. And it was amazing. It was like the A to Z Vice Guide to Rehab written by Leslie Arfin. I remember Jay was like Juicy Couture because it was all like the dope fiends had to wear like cozy clothes at rehab. M was method, like it was fantastic. So, but I mean, that was all Gavin, right?
Yeah,
like
he left in 08, right?
Yeah. And once Gavin left, they just totally destroyed what the magazine actually was.
They tried to hang on. Remember, they tried to hang. Now, I slipped in there. Butler very kindly got me sort of in there when they were trying to maintain the McInnes feel and sort of failing at it. And before they went woke, and by like 13, 14, they went fully woke. But before that, just to give context, they went ridiculously woke around 13 or 14. Right. But this was before that. And they were trying to hang on to McInnes's wildness and the punk wildness of that. And so I was glad to be in there at that time. But now I'm like, their reputation, it's a woke.
Yeah, Blake's column for Vice was great. I read like every single one.
That's when they still had the do's and don'ts, and they were trying to keep that voice of McKinnon, very insulting, very funny. But they fell off real hard. Brutal.
Blake, he put me on to some writers with that, actually. I remember he introduced me to Kobo Ab, the Japanese writer.
Oh, yeah, amazing.
Very appreciative of.
Yeah. Boxman is really good. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, Boxman's insanely good.
It was their last dying breath. What did you think of Reigns when you saw, Reigns in my mind went woke and fell off hard, but used to be a genius. Is she still woke from last I haven't checked in a while.
She definitely is. But at the same time, when I saw her read a couple weeks ago, there is something compelling about the way her work flows or something.
That early work was so big, man. Her and Glenham, and back when those Gen X girls really had some style, and then it dissipated quite fast. Sorry to say. I imagine it's still somewhere in there beyond the politics that have destroyed them, and a lot of their later books as well. Their original books were wild. Really good, high talent. The play she did was brilliant. Reigns. The Tens is when So with her, she did this poem called "Save the World," and this is the millennial anthem, I think. And it changed. Her whole style changed, and her whole thing became about save the fucking world. And it's a poem about how Watchmen is too violent of a movie. I don't. Why is this even? It was like sub Frank O'Hara shit. It was just a denial, and then she just went NPR woke 100% after that.
Yeah.
I never forget.
Me neither. No, like that's the thing too. Is like, because some of those girls from that, at least the generation previous to her, some of those women, like I still think I still like Chris Krauss's Aliens and Anorexia novel quite a bit. And I think Vanessa Place is like straight up one of the greatest literary minds of our generation, and the only woman who never bought into any of the bullshit that they tried to make her sell.
Never did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she got canceled time and again, didn't give a shit because she has that job where she doesn't have to care.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. She's got the coolest fucking backstory. Like she represents male sex offenders for a day job.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Forgot about that. Yeah, that's funny.
I got to reach out to get her on this show at some point. I've been meaning to try and meet her somehow.
That would be amazing. That would be great. That would be wonderful. Twitter she had that's all gone with the wind.
Yeah.
They tried to cancel it. I don't know. It was some horse shit, you know.
They
tried to cancel her.
Did you read the 1001 rape jokes or whatever?
Yeah, I remember when that came out. Yeah. Really good, really fun. You know, she has that video where she's at a poetry reading and she stabs that guy. You know, it's and the young lady doing the reading is just going tree.
Yeah.
And then she just stabs a guy random.
I think people are there is a scene forming where people are kind of thirsting for interesting work again. Surely, I mean, I think something has happened, at least in like the couple of years. Cause like all these shows, all this, I don't think I would have gotten a publishing contract if not for that energy. And maybe we'll be all right. Maybe we won't. Maybe that's fine.
Yeah, you know, these trends, maybe perhaps they follow money and or what pretty girls like, some combination therein, what pretty girls are into and what will get you a pretty girl. And then what they say, you know, go woke, go broke started to hurt enough people with money that they're going to switch their proclivities. I've been excluded from every trend, but even back, you know, before, you know, woke, but that's fine. And as I should be. I'm not complaining. The artist should be, but if you can cross over, but if you can sometimes cross over, it's nice. It's fun without compromise, right? Crossover. If you're taken in, not even of your own accord or of your own, you know, weak human moment, sniveling a chord. I think I came to you begging, seeing that you get it and saying, please let us discuss, please. In my desperation, in a weaker human moment of, you know, of 5 people having bought my work, etc. You know, and so no one's above that. No one's above that. But ideally, it's incorporated by the larger culture. You know, like in the '90s way that seems to never will happen again.
I already got the best fucking name. Safety Propaganda is such a great name for a publisher.
Yeah, the balance. Yeah.
Started the project, and I have to tip the hat to former guest host Bimbo Ubermensch for actually telling me that Safety Propaganda was the one to go with. So
let's unneuter the culture, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah, let's give everybody a big old black dick bag.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Agitator podcast. My name is J. David Osborne. That's Kelby Losak. We have a very special guest today, a good friend of mine. He's been a friend of mine for, I think, 37 years. Mr. Sean Kilpatrick. Sean, how are you today?
Oh, mushy mushy. Very good. Very good.
Off rip, he actually learned Japanese to be on the podcast, which is super tight. It's a difficult language. It's up there. I think the most difficult languages for English speakers to learn are Polish, Korean, Japanese, and Russian. So, and Chinese, because that shit doesn't even make sense. But anyhow, Sean is the author of many books. Sucker June. His newest one is Gumshorn. I get that right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. Millennial Noir, which I have questions about. What makes it a millennial noir? And we are going to be talking about 2011's Monsters Club, directed by Toshiada Toyota, who did one of the Crow's Zero films that we reviewed a few weeks back. I don't know. Time isn't real.
What is time?
But anyhow, Sean, why don't you, you've been on my podcast twice, but for any new listeners to Agitator, what's a day in the life of Sean Kilpatrick like?
Anti-millennial, as possible.
What makes it anti-millennial?
Like our guys Miike, like our guys Toyota, and Tsukamoto as well. I try not to give a fuck in the most naturally Gen X way possible, as they do so eloquently. I haven't reached that status yet. I'm still technically a millennial, but I try.
Yeah, I saw in one of your reviews you mentioned Tokyo Fist, and you say that it's a better version of Fight Club, which I thought was... I love both those movies, but I liked that description of it.
Fight Club on crack, I'd say. I love both as well.
That's what it is, yeah.
Yeah, both very good, but Tokyo Fist, I guess I would probably lean towards, although both are very important to me.
I vibe with that Gen X thinking that you bring up because my parents, they're Gen X, and I don't relate to a lot of my millennial brethren who had different upbringings, I guess, and rebelled more hardcore. I thought my parents were cool as shit, so I actually just kind of feel like the only normal, sane person a lot of times.
They rebelled into pansyhood, so it's not... It's a weird reversal of rebellion. As our guys here are the true kind of rebels. They're true delinquents. They're true fucked up artists, whereas we don't have that now.
Do you think being fucked up is important to being an artist, or can you just be a normal guy and be an artist?
I wouldn't say it's a mandate, but it does help. There's exceptions.
Being normal is kind of the new rebellion, which to me is pretty chill, because I can feel like I'm being a rebel and I'm just grilling a steak and not giving a fuck about where it came from, or having a nuclear family to take care of, and
all the anti-family stuff's been turned on its head, where once rebellious now has been sold up the river.
It just seems like every idea, whether it's anti-natalism, everything gets subsumed into this big corporatocracy. So they find a way to make, in their eyes that are, or their thoughts rather, which are driven just by, the profit of today. They're kind of thinking, okay, we can not have kids, but we can sell you all kinds of cool cat and dog toys and dating apps and things like that. So you have Legati being all, dark, and it ends up finding its pop culture form in True Detective, right? And you have Matthew McConaughey telling you about how the world is shit, which, it's still tight, but it's just funny how that kind of stuff gets subsumed.
But then they have to cap it up with that happy-go-lucky ending they tagged on there after quoting my guy Sharian. They got my hopes up.
It wasn't like a comic book or like an Alan Moore pastiche or something at the end of True Detective, where he talks about like the light winning or something, or
was it?
Look at the stars, you see all the dark.
Okay, maybe I misjudged it. I like Moore.
Yeah, Moore is good. So Monsters Club, we saw movie is pretty much impossible to get. I couldn't find it on any streaming service. It's hard to buy, so I ended up finding it and sending it to you fellas. So I'm interested. I'll give just a brief overall plot. I know that Sean has said in the past that reviewers who summarize plot should be executed. But we're going to do a little bit of plot summary here, and maybe we can just do like a Yakuza pinky sacrifice or something. But basically it's about a guy who lives in a cabin. He's a rich kid. His family dies. Dad dies of cancer or something. Mom dies after that. Brother commits suicide. Other brother gets into a motorcycle accident. It's just down to him and his sister. And so he decides to go to a cabin in the woods and send bombs to people under these kind of, I thought, slightly flimsy, but it might just be a durational issue. Flimsy critiques of not flimsy critiques of industrial society, but, it's like Kaczynski light type shit. But mostly he wants people to read his poems. So I felt like that resonated with me and would probably resonate with y'all as well. But from there, I'm just interested in y'all's initial impressions of the movie.
It's a beautiful tone poem, Japanese version of Kaczynski, kind of based off the work of Kenji. No, I'm going to say it wrong.
Miyazawa? Yeah, Miyazawa. Right, there's all the references to him in there. His manifesto is indeed a poetical work and it's all coming from his family. His sister is the snitch this time, not the brother, like with Kaczynski, and even she is more sort of blamelessly, poetically beautiful. The Japanese language seems to make women sound more feminine and men more masculine. It's such a beautiful, lyrical, poetical language. This film is Toyota. He's really settled into being able to sit in a moment with all these dead brother as a demon who is made perhaps out of coconut frosting or plastique claymore, and he's conversing with him and his other younger brother. Now the brothers. No, I don't want to. Okay, I'm going to go on too much. But brother's name means snow. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I was looking into this, and he's not perhaps pure as, but he's sort of a paragon. It's very family based, whereas Kaczynski, I don't think, was dwelling on his family too much. He was a loner.
I read an interview with Toyota where they were asking about his influence with Kaczynski and everything, and it was an American interview when he was showing the film in New York, and he just casually mentions the fascination and the availability of like documentaries, and there's Japanese books about the Unabomber and all this shit, and then he comes to America where he's like, apparently people hate him here, but yeah, that's he's like, it seems like Americans don't really like him, and he just kind of goes on.
He's such a cool Gen X guy. He wouldn't get it. He's like, I'm inspired by this guy. He's interesting. What's the problem? And this is the culture that put the cannibal guy has his own show, right? This is that culture.
Have you guys seen the documentary called Das Net?
I don't think so.
I think it's on YouTube. No, it's a German documentary about the Unabomber and the birth of the internet. And this guy, in a typical stoical German fashion, is at one point interviewing victims of Ted Kaczynski's mail bombing spree. Obviously the ones that survived. So he's talking to this dude who has a prosthetic arm, and they're going back and forth about the internet and about technology, about this encroaching, overwhelming technocracy. And the interviewer says, so do you think that Kaczynski maybe had some good ideas? And the dude with the prosthetic arm starts trembling, shaking. His voice gets a quiver in it, and he says, that man is a goddamn monster. He's a maniac. And I'm like, well, I mean, you think that. Yeah, for sure.
Well, you seem a little biased, sir.
Have you read his masterwork where he predicts the future? This work of genius?
He does. Yeah, the big takeaway I had from Industrial Society, basically, like the way I think about it in snow terms, is that it's a snowball effect. And he has a metaphor in that book about, I think it's called like the Seven Kingdoms metaphor, but it's this idea that there's this this big piece of land that's divided into 7 kingdoms, and there's an enchanted special forest or what have you that all 7 kingdoms agree no one's allowed to cut down trees from there, right? But eventually one king of one of the kingdoms starts cutting the trees down because he figures if he doesn't do it first, the other kingdoms will do it, and then all 6 of them jump in once that one starts. And that's this whole idea with technology, right? It's like, if we don't create the Boston Dynamics robot dog first, somebody else is going to do it, and that's just how this whole accelerationist thing compounds.
A brilliant man. Flawless.
It's kind of like, if we don't storm the Capitol first, then somebody else is gonna.
If I don't wear the awesome hat with the horns, that guy's in solitary. I think he's been in solitary for this entire time.
Yeah, imagine him and McVeigh talking. I thought they hung out a bit in solitary.
Oh, really?
Before McVeigh was killed.
Kaczynski and McVeigh talked?
Yeah, I think a few times.
McVeigh was definitely set up, right?
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that Kaczynski was more of that lone wolf figure. But he was Kaczynski was MK Ultra, wasn't he?
that show did that episode really beautifully. The Netflix show, a lot of that show is a bit silly, but that episode is a gorgeous Terrence Malick-esque take on his brainwashing at Harvard. You know,
Was that in Wormwood? Was that what it? Or was that the MK Ultra documentary that you're talking about, or was it a Kaczynski specific one?
I think there's some vague reference in that, but I'm talking about that Manhunt where Paul Beatty plays him.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, I haven't seen that one.
Really good acting, but a lot of bullshit about the FBI, isn't it?
Right on. Do you have any affinity for Kaczynski? Any favorite Kaczynski greatest hits? I'm asking you this because I want to connect it to the film, and I want to know how you were vibing with Ryoichi, our protagonist.
Oh, I felt it. It's hyper millennial to shoot up a thing. As I say, it's our one good trait is the mass shooting. But you know, and so, but the idea of murder to get your work seen is a beautiful idea. Now, in practice, I don't know. And also, you know, I like his whole Jacques Ellul, the Unabomber, but I'm not that big of a fan of the Earth itself or nature. But I do appreciate his assessing the situation that astutely and his devotion.
Okay, but this is really interesting because so you just said that you're not a big fan of the Earth, and I find that is completely fascinating to me. So is what you're basically saying you hate humanity more than the Earth, but you're not a big fan of either? Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. That is such a unique perspective, and I'm being dead serious right now. Like, that's the kind of shit that I'm looking for, is just that sort of blatant honesty. I feel like too much, a big millennial trait is equivocation. We equivocate like motherfuckers. And
preamble, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What I'm doing right now, I'm preambling, right?
Well, it's somewhat necessary on a podcast, perhaps. I mean, they're always cautiously putting a porch on any strong statement, right?
Right, exactly. And I'm a big fan right now, whether I necessarily agree with it or not, of people just saying, you know, this is what I think, right? A lot of the COVID arguments that go on right now, people take a super moralistic stance. And it's kind of like when you try to argue with them, they come back at you and they're like, well, 700,000 people have died. And I just want people to just start being like, yeah, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't move the dial for me. I'm sorry, but not sorry. Do you see what I mean?
Death of one is a tragedy.
Yeah.
Death of a million, right?
That's right. It's Mr. Stalin. Yeah, my hero. So, Kelby, how did I know that you vibed with this movie, but you were in a dark place. Did this movie put you in a dark place? Were you already there? What was going on?
No, so this week, I didn't sleep much for one, and I've been working with a lot of chemical fumes on another level. So I was in a suicidal place, basically, and then this movie is just heavy with suicidal ruminations and suicidal characters, and I decided to thug it out, like, you know, with where my headspace was. And then while watching it, I was like, oh fuck, we're going here. I'm just gonna keep watching it, and then we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's the vibe that I was sitting with going through this movie. It was like, this is heavy, like not even on the society level. I think I felt like with the protagonist, how you were saying earlier, his he has sort of a flimsy ideal behind the bombs and everything. I sort of felt that, how it was like trying to give a reason for this behavior, but really just wanting to blow shit up or whatever, just cause destruction. Because that's kind of where I was at, you know, trying to go through my own head of like, what, all right, why am I here again? What am I, you know, why am I feeling this again? What am I gonna do it this time? And what's my reason? Do I have a reason? Let me come up with a reason. Yeah, so I was feeling it on that level pretty big.
One level of nihilism would have Kaczynski nihilism melt people's progress off the earth, my beloved earth. But we have to break through to the next level of nihilism where and then melt the earth as well. It becomes a bit much to shoulder.
Right.
Yeah.
Go deeper with that. What is that? I like that, but give me more of that.
Well, the mindset of it, whereas I guess it would apply to us as writers. To put it into practice, you'd have to be something lower than a politician, perhaps, or a serial killer. Same difference, but some kind of serial killers aren't in fashion anymore. I mean, I guess they can bust them pretty quick now. My beloved retro era is gone.
Do you think that serial killers are really gone? Do you think that they haven't just, found... Because I was thinking about this. I was thinking about how easy it would be to kill somebody if you had no connection to them. I know cameras are everywhere in places like London. I'm assuming New York and LA have cameras everywhere. But for example, if I were to, I don't know, like drive out to the Brahms where the cashier gave me a little bit of shit while handing me my banana split and just waited, and then they got into their little Camry, right? Started driving down the road. I followed them, waited for them to get to their house, and then I just sniped them from inside my car with my Taurus doesn't have, let's say I had a silencer on the gun, right? And I just, and then they were done. I mean, that you could still do that.
Some Washington, D.C. sniper shit.
Yeah, do you think anybody would catch me if I hypothetically did that?
Well, nowadays, could pull it off. Maybe killers just got better and then went underground.
What if I sent a
bomb to a guy?
Do you think they would catch me if I did that?
Do we have to couch it with saying we're joking, or should we...
I was hacked, right? I was hacked.
I was hacked, yeah.
Yeah, I love that meme of that, yeah. I love the old head.
Yeah, let the old head speak on it.
Yeah, letting the old head speak on it was a classic for like 2 days, and I tried to jump in on that, and I got crickets. I was like, damn. I was trying to be a part of the R-Dub party, you know what I mean? Just hanging out with my bros online. I got, and I thought I had a good one too. All I'm saying is that, I'm just a man without a country.
It's the writer's station, yeah?
Yeah,
So.
I think definitely. And that's why sometimes you just want to kind of kill somebody with a cigar bomb with your little poem inside.
That's right.
It's kind of a nice fantasy though, right? I mean, blowing people up with bombs in the mail. When I was watching this movie, I get Kelby's perspective on it as it being this kind of, as Sean said, tone poem. It's got definite like nihilist darkness to it, but in a weird way, I found this movie oddly inspiring in its kind of thesis of becoming somehow becoming nothing in this society, right? His ghost brothers and him get into a bunch of arguments about what he's doing, and they come at it from a logical angle that you're never going to get a bomb to anybody who really matters. You're just going to blow up, kind of low level people or whatever. And your actual goal of exit should ultimately be suicide, right? And I think that these are, this is like sweating nitroglycerin dynamite to talk about with like people who listen to this and might have some kind of suicidal depression or something like that. But I liked taking that becoming nothing metaphorically. At this point, I don't have any suicidal ideation. So it's kind of like a fun idea to play around with, but I don't know, maybe not so much.
Stop equivocating.
There I go.
Stop equivocating.
I equivocated again. I did it again.
Like I don't relate to a lot of people with the whole like. 'Cause I have suicidal depression, ideation, and everything that I've struggled with on and off to varying degrees, and at some random, like the other day, like just very not really triggered by anything in particular, just sort of thought, and I have always had issue with the approach to trying to remedy it or to try and like, I don't know, I'm never going to call a fucking hotline for one. And awareness of what? That some people might kill themselves? Like, I don't... if you're thinking there's a solution to that, then you're probably the one who needs some awareness of the reality. But I'm on the same wave as you with that. I actually did get some sort of like artistic inspiration from it and sitting through that might have like been good for me, because to me, I feel like there's no remedy, especially because I go down a dark hole every time the shit comes up where I'm like, I have a lot of friends who have pulled the trigger and family members, like, have blood with people who have, like, you know, offed themselves, and usually at really good times in their life. So I'm like, I always get to thinking about that, where it's like, damn, I don't know if there's any way to be saved from this. So I think it's just it's a thing you have to sit through and try and embrace the way that Sean embraces not really vibing with humanity or the earth. Like, that's fascinating to me, because it's also like, you're still here. It gives a different meaning to life when it's like, say, I frequently ponder killing myself and I'm still here. So it's sort of a mystery. I think the mystery is keeping me around as long as I can stomach it, to try and figure out that why. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, you know, suicide is my only form of daily optimism, the thought of accomplishing something that beautiful. But it is a big effort, and also I don't know that I would recommend it or thinking that way unless I was angry at someone. Whereas I don't recommend that mindset. But if it's there, it's there. And as we're writers, it's obviously going to be there. But there's a cultural difference, I think, with this film, is that it's an extremely existential, familial sort of contemplation of suicide, whereas in America, we're way more practically and more angry and less necessarily family, close with the family. Money is our family in America. So not that I'm a commie, but I'm saying the paycheck is more what you use to get your space here. Not that it's always bad, but what I'm saying, though, is that since in this version he is kind of well off and used his inheritance, because Kaczynski built a little shack for himself. This is more American, right? It wasn't very existential. It was more proactive.
Right. That's really interesting. The idea of Kaczynski as a more DIY, he's like a hustlepreneur, right? And this guy is more, because he's already financially secure. It's not coming back to me exactly. So he's in the space that he is right now, basically because his family is dead, right? I'm trying to remember if the film really goes into that, because he has his interviews with his two brothers, one of whom laid his motorcycle down, and I think that wasn't that guy in Porno Star. I think that actor was in Porno Star.
Yeah, I think so.
He's the only one who I recognized as being potentially from another Toyota film.
Well, the main character, Rigushi,
right.
He's a Blue Spring, and
he's in Blue Spring, yeah.
I think another one too.
Nine Souls or whatever, which are definitely movies that we're gonna get to. But anyway, so he has these interviews, but he seems to be somebody who believes very much in poetry and art, and in kind of doing something with your. I've always been fascinated by and perhaps this is a more East Asian concept of putting your of suicide as an act that is a part of a life rather than an end.
Right.
Some kind of statement that is kind of a capper, but also designed to retroactively affect. Kind of like the way, Mishima, all of Mishima's books are kind of colored by his final, seppuku. Just this idea of it being a kind of life not being held in such high esteem. It makes me think of, right now how we have this premium on human life, bare life, right? And the fact that people are so kind of terrified of, catching a bug and it killing them, because then life will be over, or somebody who they care about's life will be over, versus just this concept of an awareness of the finitude, maybe. Not really sure where I'm going with this. This is out of my depth.
Well, maybe like the suicidal artist too is a good archetype, or one that goes perfectly, the only one that really makes sense to assign that sort of suicide to, because it is a form of art. It's it's the period. It's not a it's a part of the life, like you said, and not just the end to it. So it's like this dance with it is sort of like you're trying to implement it at the right time, because once you do, that's like the big, I mean, I guess it is the finish, but like it doesn't come out of nowhere. It doesn't come at the end. It exists there the whole time. So it's like the act might be the thing that draws the curtains, but like the whole time you're doing this performance with it, like trying to it's there influencing your steps and everything, and that kind of dancing with the end, like what are you doing up to the end, is kind of and pondering it and taking this theme or whatever and carrying it with you like through day-to-day existence kind of makes your life like your artwork or whatever. And I think that's maybe where the art itself just makes sense, like the making of art, writing or whatever is like an appropriate I don't even know what to call it, really exercise pursuit for the suicidal.
Miyazawa's most famous poem is about watching his sister die of tuberculosis. As he's at her deathbed, he has to keep sticking his head in the closet to scream, cry in mourning. And in this poem, he compares this to watching snow like slush, this kind of grief, the farewell poem, and it's all over this movie.
Yeah, it does feel like there's almost, there are the punctuating moments of, people shooting themselves in the mouth, yelling suddenly, Ryoichi kicking over his pyramid of batteries. Overall, it's this very quiet, restrained movie. So I want to actually talk a little bit more generally, and we can weave back into Monsters Club at will. But I wanted to talk about your writing, Sean, and your approach to art.
Oh no!
Don't say ew. This is good. No, don't say oh no. No, this is good. This is good stuff. There are some quotes that I like. One of them is, let's make some wrong choices about what people will sit through. And also that everything that you get published is in the process of being edited. So I'm curious, in a broad general sense, how you approach the things that you write, because your style is so unique, even amongst more surreal, avant-garde writers. I mean, growing up, I would read like Siratori and obviously like Blake Butler and your stuff. And you guys, like Siratori always seemed like this just kind of manic, kind of Tetsuo guy, right? Where it was just these words. And Butler is more nauseating in the way that he writes. Yours has a playfulness to it. It always seems fun, even when it's really angry. So I'm just curious about the headspace that you're in when you write that, your goals, like what you're trying to do, what you're trying to see, what you can get people to sit through.
It's one below elegance, and it's not sort of elegant, the elegance of hatred, amplified maximalism, but I like to mix that in with Lishian consecution to taper it down a bit. That's the blend of it, the tech blend. What I really want to be, though, is a pinku writer in Japan circa 1966. That's all I want. I just want to be writing The Embryo Hunts in Secret and Sex Hunter. This is all I want.
Yeah, yeah, right on. Yeah, your taste in movies runs the gamut, because you're very well read, you're very, very well watched, and your taste really runs the gamut from some fucking obscure shit that I've never heard of to 80s action flicks, right? Like you sort of take it all in, and you seem to like a lot of stuff too. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's why I'll never be cool. I'll never be Gen X fully, because I can't. I just love it too much. I love too many things,
Mm-hmm. Except for Melissa Broder, right?
Well, not that
Melissa
cunt,
Broder. Dude, your review of the Pisces is one of the all-timers. Did you get in trouble for that? I remember you sent it to me.
I think I'm below trouble. I'm off the radar,
Oh, okay. Because it's mean. You really didn't like the Pisces.
But she earned that. She exhibited behavior towards me.
Oh, right.
But I don't strike randomly in that way. I mean, there was provocation. I mean, but that's petty stuff. That's petty stuff. I like that review because it is one of my meanest, and that's the goal.
Is there value in being petty?
Definitely.
Yeah. What do you think, Kelby?
I think the nature of value is sort of wrapped up in our own ability to define it. So I think there's really value in whatever you can attribute value to. If you can make something valuable out of pettiness, if you can have a good time, take a good jab, I mean, I think so. It's on a grander scheme, like, what do you get value of? Like little joys, money. If you make money out of being petty, then there you go, if that's what you value. If it's worth a good chuckle or creates good art, to me that's where it would be. Like, if you're making good art, then wherever that comes from is valuable, I think.
Our guy Toyota he was the shogi chess champion in his youth, right? And he became very disillusioned with that. His films bear the marking of his pacing is rhythmic. Remember when films used to just sit in their moments and
right.
Yeah.
Right? This used to be a thing. There would be character studies and mood pieces and things like this. He's very much of that generation, and what a more natural artist he is. He's of himself more than a lot of filmmakers. I think it applies to what you're saying as well. This is why we're also drawn to these guys. They're all delinquents. They all became disillusioned with their straightforward Japanese lives and dropped out of, Miike became the biker guy, and Tsukamoto with his big problems with his ad salesman father,
Yeah.
That's something that I'd like to see that more in art now. With the whole diversity thing in art, basically Hollywood and the writing community, or the publishing industry, I should say, got the memo and interpreted that as like, let's hire the same sort of, children of wealth who have nothing of interest to say, but make it black this time. Instead of, what about people? That's why what you're saying is so important, because, Miike, Tsukamoto, these guys who, we've gone into detail in the show before about how Miike came up, and he's essentially a dude who failed into, from 1999 to 2004, like the most brilliant run for my money in the history of cinema. And he did that because he knew that he couldn't cut it as a motorcycle racer, and then he couldn't cut it as a mechanic or an engineer because it took math, and just started holding a boom mic and running and getting coffee for people on film sets, and eventually got the chance to make bikini chicks who are also spies type movies, and then just built from there. And that's the kind of career trajectory, me being 35 now. I mean, it feels like when I would have been the age to get in on the ground floor like that those doors had all already been closed, and everything just seemed to get a lot safer because I guess the money dried up or whatever. But more importantly, I think the creativity just dried up. I talk to filmmakers all the time and ask them why they don't make more movies, and they give me these long, droning, rambling speeches about how much it costs for craft service tables and, how you got to pay this, that, and the other. And then you look at like Tsukamoto, who just won't work with unions, period. He refuses to work. Like, he demands that he has volunteers work on his movies for free. Sometimes even those volunteers pay for elements. He's this total anti-hero in terms of today's discourse. That's, I think, what all I would really ask for is like some kind of ability to make weird, cool shit that 5 people might like, which is where I guess that's where I'm at anyway, so can't complain. But
they had backing. They had these studios. They had the V Cinema, which allowed them to, within the constraints of a budget, right, to fucking do what they want, which you don't see now, right? Even though it's a small budget, they still had this backing, and it goes back through all the Pinku and all their great directors who trained our guys, Imamuru training Miike, and the guy who did there's a guy that did the movie Knockout that inspired Toyota, and he became his then he let him at 21 write a script for a chess movie. And then we got Sogo Ishii is sort of the father of that generation with Burst City. You can see Tsukamoto, right? And then with Crazy Family, you can see Miike
No, it's interesting because the thing about Imamura and Miike that was so interesting is that his school was free, which is the only reason Miike went, because it was all government subsidized at the time. And Miike didn't do any of his assignments at all. And how he got into the industry was at the end of the semester, they needed an assistant for a commercial shoot, and all of the students were busy working on their final projects, Miike being the only student who fucked off and didn't do anything. And so had a clear slate to work on this commercial, and the rest is history, you know?
Amazing.
But I love these stories of fuck-ups failing up, right? Instead of like fail sons failing up.
Just through sheer tenacity and will and risk and not giving a fuck. You know, people wanted to give them shit because they were, you know what they are? They're all cool, and they're cool in a way that you don't see anymore. I admire it. I was never in with the cool kids myself, so I admire it from a distance.
I think Kelby's cool. He's got face tattoos. So
Yeah,
I think Kelby's
I'm pretty cool. I was one of the cool kids.
Nice. I admire it.
But I fought my way in with the cool kids. I'm also pro bullying because that was my rite of passage was fighting back with the bullies and being able to be cool. Yeah, and a lot of like Toyota's explanation of his things that he implements or aesthetics, like why this shaving cream chicken feather ghost looking thing, and he was like, oh, the actor who plays that ghost figure, she's a performance artist, makeup artist type person, and that was the type of shit she was doing. And then when he hired her on, he was just like, that shit's cool, let's do it.
Oh, I love that.
I didn't know that.
I love that ability to scavenge these awesome images for a movie, because I didn't know anything about Monsters Club walking into it, and when I saw that about 15 minutes in, it made me, be like, what the fuck am I watching, right? And it's so great, it's so jarring in a quiet way, because there's no great, orchestral swell when this monster thing comes on. It's just kind of there in the snow. And I was trying to figure out what the fuck it was too, I was like, is this some Dollar Shave Club type shit in the movie? Like a little, but no, that kind of thing is awesome. And I wish that you hear about this kind of stuff all the time, people being fans of musicians and having them do soundtracks for movies that go on to, basically be made by their soundtrack, monster designers sort of being found, like, Junji Ito and stuff like that. I don't know. I love that. I love this idea that, you get this coherent whole that is the movie, but it's a whole because it allows itself to kind of absorb these other visions wholesale and respectfully.
Yeah, and it's that vision and that vibe is like sort of the primary purpose of art, like this collage of aesthetic, right? Like everybody, like the best shit to me seems to always be the things that a lot of people discredit for being style over substance, and that's always perplexing to me because I'm like, what? It's art. What substance are you talking about? Like, you want no style and just didactic woke bullshit? What do you like? What substance? The style is the substance. That's the thing. That's the shit. The
medium is the message.
The medium is the message. Like, the aesthetic is the art. The cool shit is what should be there. Like, it should just be cool.
Absolutely. This thing against style started in the 90s. There was so much fucking style in the 90s that it became contrarian cool to complain about it. You see what I'm saying? And this was a critical bugaboo in the fucking 90s. This is when I started seeing it everywhere. Indulgent, and stylistic without substance and all this bitching. And it was, I always felt like grandmothers writing that. And Ebert is guilty of it too, and he's guilty of a lot.
Yeah, rest in piss.
Yeah,
Bitch.
Absolutely. It's hard to see how woke he was programmed in, and you don't think it right off. And I remember he was good for if you want to read reviews about mainstream dramas or something like that. But he really did a lot of damage, and he was also one of these moral panic people in the 80s. But
he's a moral pan. He was a total bozo about Fight Club and all these movies that had violence in them. He gave Fight Club 1 star. I remember that. And thinking to myself, like, what is this guy even talking about? He wrote Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
You get older and you start clutching those pearls tighter.
Yeah, despicable. You wouldn't think about it back then because everything wasn't so uber politicized. You would just, I guess he likes left-wing stuff, okay. And then you would just read but as I say, yeah, he complete buffoon and disgusting propagandist.
Yeah, and he was a very clear writer. Some of his reviews I thought were very beautiful, especially some of the shorter ones that were more kind of wistful and thoughtful.
Yeah,
I had time for that, But the moral crusades about film never really stuck with me because I've always thought the uglier and nastier a movie is, the better it is.
Hell yeah.
For going back to that medium is the message type thing, and this also kind of goes back to the talk about suicide and depression and all that shit. It's like those things, the things that are the meanest and the nastiest are what kind of, feel the best in the animal brain or in the gut, right? And not that art has to be utilitarian in any way, shape, or form. I don't think it has to be at all. But if we're talking about use case scenarios, it's helpful, man. It's good. It feels good. You feel something, You feel something that is just like completely anti everything that's around you, and it makes you feel virile, Makes you feel like going out and committing acts of atrocity. It's good stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It goes back to trapping that kind of shit in the cage. Like we've talked about nihilism on this show before, and because I don't identify with like nihilist philosophy or anything, but I'm a pretty I don't know what kind of ist I am, but I'm pretty optimist, or try to be. But nihilist art is like my shit 100%. And with the darker shit, the suicide shit and everything, and I have a strong connection to that. Like I'm not triggered by any of it. Like if anything, I want more of it to keep it on the table to look at, or in the cage or whatever.
Oh yeah, because we write, so we can't be nihilists really fully, because it's only aesthetic to us, because we continue to write. Right. And when I say I love a movie like Retreat Through the Wet Wasteland, I don't want Flesh Market or Black Snow. I don't want to torture women. It's just that the fever dream of stylistic cinema really exemplifies the struggle of, relationship, etc., or whatever we want to foist onto it, through its beautiful art of this tortured flesh, beginning with early 60s Pinku. It's a dream. There's nothing to indict from a work of art, even though we live in the indictment era. The moment I give in to all these urges that were put in me before I saw art or knew what art was, when I give in to those, then you can, then the moralism can begin. Okay, but not while I'm using these films to save people's lives by not murdering everybody. You see?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to kill anybody. I just like thinking about it.
Yeah. Ideation.
Yeah. It's fun. It's fun to think about. It's just fun to think about, just the smell of cordite coming out of your AR as, just as you're stepping over, the bodies of, the local daycare center. It feels good to think about that kind of stuff.
It's a healthy good time.
Yeah. I don't actually want to do it.
We're a red-blooded American men, and we like to think of these things and count your lucky stars that we think about them.
Because people used to not have any time to think about these kind of things because they were too busy, digging up potatoes or whatever the fuck those sad sacks did, and then they just did the things, and that's why art is good. Art is overall a force for good, and the meaner and nastier it is, the better. Do you think that Monsters Club is a mean or nasty film?
It's a beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous poem. There's a cultural loss here because that author, but
Kenji Miyazawa.
Yeah. Thank you. Him. He was a type of Buddhist. Now, and it's lost on me, but it's very heavily. I think it's all over this film. This type of Buddhism. But something about it was that the holy object, which plays into the bomb stuff, perhaps.
Ooh. Wait, go back here. The holy object as bomb? What is that like? So
I'm just free associating that.
No, I like that. I like the idea of a bomb as a holy object, guns as holy objects, these potentials for insane violence as being somehow sacred in their own way. I fuck with that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's Nichiren Buddhism.
Yes. Thank you.
It's very much influenced by the Lotus Sutra, which is kind of the doctrine of... That's the one where the Buddha never died. The Buddha and everything you do is a step towards Buddhahood. So I can see how that sacred object, bomb as sacred object, would have a play in that kind of thinking. If everything you do is a step towards that Buddhahood.
I don't know much about it. What's the thing where if you see the Buddha on the road, kill him? You know what I'm saying?
I'm not positive. I know what you're talking about, but
I don't know if that plays into this.
Well, with my limited understanding of Buddhism, it's that, you're moving towards a kind of auto-annihilationist trajectory, essentially. And it basically is a religion of contradiction, paradoxes, and constant destruction and rebirth. So I think that the whole idea, and sometimes you'll see these Buddhist practices, because I've been reading more of these books lately, and they've talked about people who get enlightened, but I've always fucked with the Zen tradition of there being no real enlightenment. I was enlightened one time in my life. I'm being dead serious. I experienced this epiphany while I was sitting in traffic, and I was staring at the bumper of a green Nissan Altima, and it was like clarity that I had ever experienced under the influence of psychedelic substances. But this wasn't a flashback or anything like that. It was just a pure bliss state, right? And it lasted for a total of 5 or 6 seconds, and it was gone, and I'll never ever forget it as long as I live. But that's kind of where if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him type thing is, because it's in the negation of enlightenment. Some form of enlightenment happens, but then you want to negate the negation and then negate that, and it's this Russian nesting doll of fucking just constant killing and rebirth. So that is my expert opinion on Buddhism.
Nice. No, that fits. You did that great podcast about all the religions and the rituals. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that I learned from that. I remember that. I think that entirely applies to our film here. Yeah. And especially, I think it's not. I mean, there's cruel elements, but I think especially with the ending where it's somewhat ambiguous that I thought he was going to blow up the people, and when he was walking.
I did too.
Right.
I did too. I was praying for it.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Yeah. But then it's sort of ambiguously just ends, right? And so that, I think, shows the more Buddhist nature of the film, I think, and the kinder element.
Now, you had a quote from Paul West in a piece that you did for Expat. I want to read it back to you and have because this is what I would call a minimalist film, for sure, right? Yeah. I mean, the camera is static. I'm thinking of the great scene with Yuki where he does his whole speech to him in one take, and I don't know, it's just absolutely fantastic stuff to watch. I love it when cameras just sit. Toyota does this all the time. He did it in Porno Star, Crow Zero, all the movies that I've seen of his. He likes to put all the actors in his frame, and he blocks it so well that they can just kind of do their thing, right? So anyway, minimalism, but this Paul West quote is minimalism is close to mediocrity and mindlessness, a way for the ungifted to have a literary career, and for readers who really hate literature to pretend to be reading something serious. So I thought that was cool because I'm not precious. I'm definitely a minimalist. I'm also 100% mediocre, and I'm fine with that too. But I'm wondering how you think about that and how that maybe reconciles with a 68-minute movie like Monsters Club.
I think West would love this movie because minimalism done formally beautifully is not how he's referring to the type of diaristic and also tripe of easily relatable, your bestseller types and your diaristic confessional, where the lack of formal structure speaks for itself. So something that's so formally gorgeous, or for writing, say, the minimalism of Consecution or the minimalism of a excellently tight pulp novel, is not, I think, applicable to this statement.
Okay.
I think some alt-lit might be.
Yeah.
some alt-lit might be. But
I think in the piece, in the expat piece, I think you were specifically you had alt-lit in your sights.
The little guy with the mustache is who I was thinking of when I
guy with the mustache.
Okay, now I'm not. The name is really not coming to me. Fuck.
Oh, the name's not coming to you. Well, then that means that he's not important.
Yeah. So, well, he's a little cunt, but.
Mm-hmm.
He's cute, he's
I hate cute. I hate cute writers so much. I hate like these kind of SSRI blank stare, just sort of like, oh, I'm crashing my car and, I'm just, I'm so fucking blown out,
It's
and
like
that's minimalism as a function of complete vapidity.
And to be fair, the opposite, where it becomes academic, dry jargon nonsense, that's also shitty, So, and
Sure.
I think in that piece, I quote how that goes bad to, it's a parody of what I want to do. The amplification of language should not be so esoterically nonsensical. And here's where we get to language poetry and all this crap, but and academic shit. There's no workman-like element. Cool as they were, all these Gen X guys, they fucking worked. They can be cool. Mike's interviewed and he's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. He's so cool and humble, right? He's a genius. He's a genius, and he works on his work, and he's got 110 films.
Yeah.
So that speaks to an increasingly millennial lack of effort and the mistaken attempt to be cool for cool's sake and not genuine natural coolness.
Right. Minimalism is a form. It's not a level of effort. You're not. There's no value. There's no good art that comes from minimal effort.
Right. Say someone like Tao Lin being pretty much the opposite of what I'm about in every way, but he's, I think, undeniably brilliant at what he does.
I agree. Yeah, no, I've got a lot of time for Tao Lin.
Yeah, I mean, like the original alt-lit guys had something going on. It's like the Beats, where the original 3 or 4 guys would, and then the rest became a sullen parody of.
Who were the original alt-lit guys? Tao Lin, Sam Pink.
Yeah, I'd say Cicero, Pink. Pink took it in a. Big.
I love Cicero. I gotta get Cicero on the show too. Sorry to interrupt, guy.
Yeah. Well, there's a few. Cicero. Who else were we?
You remember Jeremy Dean? That guy.
I mean, Dean is the great. Dean should be spoken of in hushed tones because of the important work he did fighting this culture before it became this culture. I think
he's like a sex guru now. I think he does like sex guru stuff.
Very cool. Yeah, I like that. But remember, I was big on, when I was in my 20s, big on not commenting on, not participating in cultural commentary and stuff like this. And meanwhile, PC culture just slips right, And I said public things against PC, but I thought of it as a minor thing. I didn't think it was going to become the death of art as it did. Here was Pink and Dean on the front lines of HTML Giant fighting that shit,
Yeah, no, Dean is a goat for sure. Do you know these people, Kelby? I don't know if this is before your time.
I was following HTML Giant and shit. I was a pure soul following HTML Giant the same way I was following like 4chan and shit. Like I wasn't involved in any of it. I was just like, damn, these nerds going crazy.
For sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. So any final thoughts on Monsters Club before we wrap this bitch up?
Talking about the actor, his first name is a lot of vowels, or his last name. However, the Japanese, that shit gets confusing. But Aita Nagayama, our protagonist of Ryuchi, Toyota was asked what about him made him cast him in that role, and he explained that he was in Toyota's debut film Blue Spring, and that actor became known to the world through TV series and commercials, and he's known as this bright, innocent, straightforward guy, but Toyota had the impression that he wasn't that he was more naive and psychologically dark, and he wanted to bring out those parts of him. And matter-of-factly responding to this interviewer, he says, yeah, and then during shooting the movie, his dad killed himself, so you might not see him play in any more roles for a while.
Wow.
Just like the like suicidal shit does not leave this movie, and I agree 100% that it's an art film. It's a beautiful film. It's a poetic film. It's not even like mean spirited, but just the vibes surrounding it are so dark.
Oh yeah, was that the actor from the real effeminate guy from Taboo, the Oshima, and he's the pretty boy in Blue Spring? Is this the same guy, or was he the other guy in Blue Spring? I'm drawing like he was like very effeminate in Taboo. He leads all the samurais into gayness.
Yeah. No, I want to say. I mean, he has such a different look, and that like without his hair all styled and shit. Like, I want to say that's the same guy. That's who came to my mind whenever I noticed he was in this, like his filmography. When I looked that up, that's who I'm pretty sure that's who it is.
Yeah, it feels like it because he's so young and that innocent, very much the opposite of Kaczynski look to him. It sort of emphasizes his death mode. Yes.
My first girlfriend was ahead of her millennial time in being offended by everything and impeaching her own stink on false charges. She didn't like how much I prioritized art and meant to prevent many an attendance of a film or an event. A Bruce Campbell book signing at the now-defunct local legend cult video store Thomas Video was successfully thwarted because of my pathetic acquiescence to this almost semi-consciously stupid bitch in teenhood. Competition for her inordinately flappy privates. In 2001, the week that Takashi Kitano's neglected Hollywood debut Brother was to premiere, I got saddled carting the girlfriend and her out-of-town gal pal between slut food sushis. The pal was a theater brat, an almost piece of ass. I'd seen a production of Beckett's Godot by a small troupe called the Zeitgeist, who focused on avant-garde plays with a punk excellence sorely missed today. Beckett's directions were slightly altered, but for the best, as when Lucky's thinking cap backfires, he is hoisted, slavering, into the audience. A superb, Gwar-esque spectacle, making quite the impression. Relaying my exuberance in good faith to the girlfriend's theater pal, I was met with another classic false charge about Beckett. Indulgence. I decided not to be kept from the Kitano premiere by this pair of imperious clodpoles. Every simp has his limit. I backed them into a locale where they likely blew a stadium of onlookers and hurried across town, parking at a distance, running in just in time to find Elation, a masterpiece I was the only patron for that day. This solace robbed from me when the internet discovered the extent of censorship inflicted on Kitano. He, of course, returned to Japan. 20-some years later, I have obtained the uncut foreign DVD version for a reasonable price. And I am informed by the newspaper that the very same girlfriend has flushed herself down the toilet because age at last sank her labia low enough. There is still, at the time of this recording, an ample path through history, the dying sparagmus of one stomped-out lineage, the vintage uncut copy, to be inherited regardless, before it, too, is deleted by the aforementioned types. Since the swiftest culture shift in history is acting as death's best and pettiest upgrade, I suggest stockpiling evidence to the contrary.